everybody. My name is Alycia Schlesinger, and I'm a graduate of the 2006 master's program. And when I came to USM, I knew I wanted to be an inspirational speaker. I was working with my dad. I was too in the mortgage industry for a lot of years, and I was working with my dad, and not very happily. I had suffered from panic attacks for 14 years, and I had I guess what I would call a mild low-grade depression and anxiety that just underrode me, like in my consciousness, even though I couldn't have told you that then. I can only tell you that in retrospect. And in addition to that, I had an experience my first year where I realized I was really checked out. Like I could feel myself inside myself, and there was like a wall between me and other people, although I wasn't aware of it either until I got here. When I started the program, I wanted to share the two highlights, the big ones that happened for me. The first was in the healing of memories, which was so magical for me. When we got to the age stage that was around 9, I had a memory of some trauma that had happened to me as a child, which, you know, by its nature, trauma is repressed. So I didn't know it was in there. I was born with a birth defect. I was born with a tumor that was the size of a softball on my right cheek. And when I was 9, I had my first surgery, and they took me an hour early. So my parents weren't there. So I was screaming down the hall for my mom, and they gave me 13 shots in about 3 minutes because they put an intern on me. 3 months later, my mom bottomed out from alcoholism, and I stayed up all night checking her breathing, thinking she was dead, and my dad wasn't home. So those were the two traumas that were inside my consciousness that I didn't know. I often say that I was like a gasoline-soaked haystack just waiting for the match, you know, but I didn't know that it was in there. And then the biggest thing that happened, which was so revealing, was I fell in love at 9. And there was this boy that I would go to the back of the room and spin the globe, and I was so in love with him. And one day he came in, and he was holding another girl's hand. And what happened in that moment, which is truly a gift of going through this program, I only know this, is I decided that the reason he was holding her hand was because I had a birth defect, because my mother was an alcoholic, and there must be something wrong with me, and I am defective and flawed. And I literally, you can see the pictures between the time I was 9 and the time I was 10, it's like a different child. I stopped looking in the camera, I stopped looking in the mirror, and as my life progressed, I started overcompensating for this deep feeling of being flawed, which leads to my relationship project. You can only imagine. It was my dad when we did our second year, and to give you an idea, what I also became aware of is I had this really intense, abusive inner dialogue. Very much perfectionistic, had to get it right because, you know, I was flawed, so there was no space or room to breathe. And what happened after I graduated is all that energy from the trauma kept surfacing. And what I did is I just kept working my process. Mary had said to us in class that there's an end to the emotions. And that was my beacon of light, because it took me 4 years to complete the emotional material that was in my consciousness. But I just kept working my process and working my process. And it concluded with me completing CHH in 2010. So to bring it full circle, and to remind you that I wanted to be an inspirational speaker when I started this process, last Wednesday, that dream came true. I was asked to speak at Pepperdine University on the topic of peace, and I spoke to 1,100 students and faculty and told my story, which is an expanded version of what I just shared with you, which in itself is a miracle. But the bigger miracle was a week before, I was sitting in my dad's office, and he said, "So, honey, you know, your talk is in a week." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'm going to be there, and I can't wait, and I am so proud of you." And he kissed my forehead. And, you know, what we learn here is that our outer relationships are just an external expression of our relationship with ourselves. And to me, that told me the progress. Not to mention my whole family in the front row, every single one of them, loving me through that whole talk, which is just absolutely miraculous. So when I tell you that I owe my life to USM, I owe my life to USM. It is the single best decision I have ever made in my life. And the way I look at it is, USM gave me back the life that I would have missed, that I dreamed of when I was 9 years old, because I didn't know I had all that going on. And today, I'm speaking. I have a show, a radio show called Empowered Purpose Radio, where I help other people find their purpose. I am an intuitive healer and I work one-on-one, and the presence that I was given here through the work here is the presence I bring to working with people, and I'm so grateful. So thank you for letting me share.